the afternoon portion of our talks. And with us today, we have Shannon Cassidy, who is a senior product manager. She'll be talking about pivoting into product. Welcome, Shannon.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. It's nice to speak to you all. I'll get to the main topic really quickly, but I want to establish something first. I am a product manager, but I'm a lot of things. I'm a rock climber, a skier, a traveler, a ceramicist, and a pretty decent cook, if I do say so myself. Variety's a spice of life. I'm also a product manager. I start a new role at Front next week. I've previously worked as a PM at Split, which was recently acquired by Harness, Autodesk, and a Series B startup. I've also been a civil engineer, a construction project manager, and a customer success manager. I have had a lot of jobs. This photo of me on the left is one of me at the old offices that I had before I pivoted into tech. I was a civil engineer and construction project manager for a number of years, which required me to get a license. Being very goal-oriented, my first career was in practice to passing that licensing exam. I was all bought in on civil engineering as a career and got that license. But after a year of hitting that milestone, I took a hard look at what was making me happy. I loved the collaborative aspects of construction and working with people to get what I designed built, but ultimately the culture just wasn't a fit. So I had to take a hard look at what I could change. I'd always been really interested in technology. My friends in tech were having a lot of fun at startups, so I made the decision to switch and learned a lot on my path to get there, which is why I want to share with you all today in order to help kickstart or contribute your own, to your own career journey. So anybody that is on here, just go ahead, shout out in the chat. I'm kind of curious, where you're at. If you're into, exploring something new, if you've made a pivot yourself, I'd love to hear what everybody's after. But to my agenda, really. So today I will be taking a look at how to jumpstart your network in a new industry. 4 approaches into transitioning into product, specifically that you might consider, and really how I executed and landed a product role myself. Now, first up, starting a network. It is daunting in a new industry, and I'm going to share some tips. So when I first decided to switch industries, I didn't even know which role I wanted to target. Getting curious and talking to people really turned out to be a very natural way for me to jumpstart my network. And this would actually pay dividends later when I started to look for new roles, even when I was looking for my second role. So my suggestion is get curious, and here are a few approaches you might try. First, start with your friends or your existing network. Even if you're not at a company that you want to work at, or if they're in a role that interests you, just start asking questions. If they aren't knowledgeable about your role, are they knowledgeable? Do they have somebody in their network that they can introduce you to? Also start attending conferences, meetups, and groups. You're already on that here. There are many free ones out there, and I think it's a great way to network with people in similar situations to yours. Asking questions, what brought you here might be a good icebreaker if you're unsure where to start. Maybe that's how you are working remotely as well. So that's your hint to answer that question here and connect with folks in the chat. I think you can also drop your LinkedIn as well. I've seen that, and it's a nice way to get people connected. I think you might be surprised to find mutual connections or interests, especially here where you might be going through similar career transitions. I think next is really, for a more targeted approach, you might actually consider running specific searches and reaching out to people on LinkedIn. The increase of remote work has made many more individuals comfortable with networking remotely. So this is a great way to keep in touch with people that you would not otherwise be able to get coffee with. You can start for searching people at organizations or in roles or had career journeys that you're interested in having yourself, and request to connect with a short, curious message. Overall, I found that the biggest barrier to entry to meeting people was just putting myself out there. Not everyone you will meet will be willing to talk, But if you keep reaching out and staying curious, there are plenty of folks interested in mentoring or willing to connect you with somebody that is. I've always found even smaller companies, the better sometimes. When you talk to someone, I think keeping that curiosity is really important. Be careful of asking for favors right off the bat, like a referral. You may ultimately want that and be introduced to their company. I totally get that. But what you can learn from them about their company or what their role is going to be really important in your journey. So it'll be really useful when you start targeting those specific companies or roles and can help you in the interview process. I think you might be surprised at what you find. Several things will start to happen as you deepen your network that will help you in any transition. You'll get a lot more comfortable with the tech world or the role you're looking at and can start to narrow down maybe what field you want to get into or specific interests you have. I think a good example of my journey here, I hadn't known that there were many specialties for product managers until I started to talk to a variety of product managers. I found that there's B2B PMs, B2C PMs, PMs that work on mobile, PMs that only work on platform and node user-facing things, and so many more. I personally found that my experience in construction in a totally different industry was a big turnoff for recruiters immediately off the bat. You might find the same thing if you're coming from a completely different industry. But after I got comfortable with the space through all the conversations I was having, it became a lot easier to tell my story and get people to look past my resume. I think networking is also a really great place to start. So when I think about getting my resume past like the recruiter and in front of a hiring manager, when I started first looking at tech roles, I figured, all right, I'm just going to start applying everywhere and see who will talk to me. This actually was a big mistake. It was time consuming. I never got any calls from those cold applications. And after talking to a couple of recruiters, I found a big theme. It was hard for anyone to translate my construction focused resume into how I might make a great product manager in tech. And to be totally fair, why would they? Product is a competitive field. And it's hard to risk your reputation as a recruiter on someone you don't know that doesn't have any experience to directly translate to the job description. So I started to shape my approach to networking around that problem. But ultimately, how can I get product experience with no product experience? I started talking to product managers that had switched from non-technical roles into product and ultimately learned 4 key ways to break in that I'm going to share with you now. So first up, the big one is go to business school. In business school, you can learn helpful business frameworks, case studies, and get exposure to many problems you may eventually face as a product manager. Generally, it can make you understand the various ways that businesses work, and you might be able to take some product-related classes. Another one main reason is really your network. The individuals you might meet in business school have possibly been working at large companies you might also be more interested in working at. They may be starting businesses of their own, or these folks might know people that fall into either of these categories. Lastly, certainly certain programs can help you get internships. During my tenure at Autodesk, one of my interns was getting their MBA. Last year, they called to let me know that Autodesk had extended them an offer as a senior product manager, like straight from business school, no previous full-time product experience. This internship really helped him get a senior PM role. So super proud of that moment as a product manager. I will say business school has some costs and some other cons. It can be really time consuming and really expensive. Think $100,000, sometimes even more. Ultimately, this path wasn't for me. The next piece of advice I had gotten was to start a business. This one's very daunting, but actually lots of people do. Maybe a crash course version of going to business school, but if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you can learn how to run a business, build a product, and get exposure to a huge network. Of course, it can be really risky, but even if you don't end up creating the next Airbnb, you'll naturally have gained lots of experience directly related to product, and it can make you a very attractive, potential candidate. Another strategy I found, and some people have been very successful at it, is just to apply to as many product roles as you can. Shape up your resume to the best of your ability, study, do mock interviews, and network your way in. Or, I think apply to as many product roles as you can. Eventually you might find a company that is a good fit for your experience and willing to take a chance on you as a product manager. This path, though, can be really difficult, especially in this market where it's hard for companies to hire less experienced product managers. And so there's another tip here, but it's not totally unheard of. I think especially at early stage startups where they're looking for someone who's ambitious with an entrepreneurial mindset. I even talked to a friend the other day who had made the jump from civil engineering to tech herself, and she landed a PM role at Amazon because of her specific experience and who she knew, without any intermediate steps to get there. And it can happen if you find the right thing. Finally, there's the path that I took. Start out in an adjacent role to product that better fits your experience and make a case for your transition as you gain exposure to product. There are a few roles that are really great for this. The first would be to get an associate PM position. These roles might be at larger companies that have specific programs for associate PMs. I've also found that they can be really highly competitive. So you might want to consider opening up your search for roles in customer success or support, where you can get tons of exposure to the product team, the end user, and experience with the product itself. I've seen folks also transition from consulting, engineering, and design, but they need to be very aware of their biases and deeply understand how product is different from their previous role to learn while they transition. Ultimately, I chose customer success as my pathway into product. This is my picture here on my first customer visit as a customer success manager in the construction tech industry. I'll go deeper into the strategy of pivoting through an adjacent role now with my own story, and I'm going to go back to when I just left construction and was starting my tech network. So off to a fresh start, I started the job hunt full-time with ambition. I had set out with the idea that I could just cold apply to roles. I think it's generally known you can apply to roles when you do not meet every single one of the qualifications and still get the job. So when I looked at job openings for product roles, I thought I had many of these required skills they have, because product roles have ambiguous qualifications. Project management, I had that experience. Working with cross-functional stakeholders, check. Entrepreneurial spirit, like, yes. I thought my soft skills might be enough to get me past the requirement of those 1 to 3 years of product experience that those roles were asking for. I think what I needed to learn was that I wasn't really finding success when I was applying there. What I didn't realize is that my resume and the stories I was telling, no matter how I worded it, could not tell the story of how my construction experience would make me a great product manager. It was because I truly did not have the experience yet. So when I started looking for roles that would meet my minimum qualifications, I thought, okay, a role in tech where I would take less than a 10% pay cut, somewhere where I can gain experience relevant to product and where I could be an asset right away. And this turned out to be customer success at a Series B startup in the construction space, a company called Rumbix. Because my experience in the industry Rumbix was serving, I knew that I could be an asset right away. I had learned from, my previous research talking to people that working as a customer success manager would get me exposure to the product team and the opportunity to collaborate with them on some projects. My salary didn't take a drastic hit with that role, and I think that can't go unnoticed for some people making considerations. Luckily, a lot of job descriptions have salary posted online now. Now, how did I make the transition from customer success into product? Like, how are we doing this full pivot? Well, first, I let everyone know very early that I was interested in product, which helped in a number of ways. My manager was keen to get me in front of as many customers as possible, familiar with problems that customers were facing and their pain points, and on small projects that could help the product team. Next, I found every way to make my construction experience useful to the product team. I spent years in the construction field, and so I was able to make a case for being a subject matter expert. For the product manager and designer I was working near, when they had like a quick question about process or needed help understanding what a user meant by a comment that was very construction oriented, I was their go-to person. I think one quick note on this point, originally when I was looking for a product role, there was a product executive I had networked with and met and told me that my construction experience would actually be a hindrance to being a PM for construction products. They had reasoned that my experience would bias me into thinking of solutions right away of a subset of the construction industry that I had worked with versus digging into problems that could apply to a broader audience. I've heard similar objections for engineers transitioning into product as well. But what I eventually learned from this advice is that I should beware of my product experience, but they can be a huge asset in understanding customer pain points. The next big thing I did was to do something better for the product that wasn't asked of me, like go beyond my role. I built a simple prototype with the product team that eventually got baked into our product offering. This was my proof that I could hear customer problems and create functionality to solve them. If you don't have any extra time in your day, don't worry. Hackathons are actually a really great way to get both your time and the developer's time in a room together to work on these special projects. So my full transition into product took a year and a half. First, it was 3 months finding a role in tech, 1 year as a customer success manager, and 3 months working as a CSM taking on projects before I went full-time as a PM. There's some luck and timing I can't ignore. The product team needed some help as I was taking on small projects, but it wouldn't have happened without my preparation along the way. It was difficult, and there was people that really seeded me with doubt, but I remained determined, and I'm so glad I did. I'm really happy to be in product. It's a way better fit for my personality. What ended up happening is that my industry experience accelerated my career. I spent a little over a year at that startup as a PM before I landed a huge opportunity as a senior product manager at Autodesk working on construction tools. I was shocked Autodesk would entertain me as a candidate for a senior role, but my industry experience ended up being one of my differentiators. At Autodesk, my manager really set me up for success to really sharpen my product skills. And then I felt the need to transition and work on something more technical challenging. Since then, I've worked at both Split on their developer ecosystem. They've now been acquired by Harness as of last week. And now I'll be starting a new role at Front next week, leading their integration and API strategy. So here's the last bits of advice I want to carry with you. First, getting your first product role is the hardest part, but the work you put in now in building a network will pay dividends far into the future. Once you get your first role, always keep your eyes open for more ways to do product management or be strategic. PMs are expected to add value to the overall business on top of the features they're producing. So, like, how can you do this in your own role? Next, always continue learning on how to leverage your previous experience. It may feel uncertain at times, but remember that you have a base to work with from all of your previous work experience. You have a lot of tools in your toolkit. And last, find your differentiators and lean in. Product managers are supposed to be good at many things, but we're also in a position to leverage other people that are great at their jobs. So I might even depend on my design and engineering counterparts to lean in where I'm not as strong and I can lean in stronger. There may be an opportunity for you to do the same. So as I wrap up, I want to ask folks, say thank you, and also ask folks to pay it forward. Have you gotten help in your own career? How can you pass that information back to the next person and make it easier for them? These are values that I keep, and one of the main reasons I've loved being able to talk to you today. So I know I didn't get a chance to answer questions that are coming in through the chat, but please connect with me on LinkedIn and ping me with your questions. And I really look forward to seeing your own career progress. Thank you so much.